Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So it used to be difficult to speak after me because I was usually the keynote speaker. And today, after all of this time and development, I find it difficult to follow the previous speakers because they do such a wonderful job. And so a great big thank you to Sam because it was a very well presented view of Islamic finance, why it matters, and why it's about prohibited. I wanted to elaborate on that a little bit because when I first came to Islamic finance, I came from conventional. So I learned my trade. I learned the banking business and the financial world, which is it's an ocean. So that's where I got my training. And then, of course, I was introduced to Islamic finance. And when I was first introduced to Islamic finance, I really couldn't understand, what the big deal was. Because you just, generally speaking, you get yourself mired into the conventional system, and you just don't understand why any other system matters. So I did want to actually touch a little bit on that. Two things I wanted to cover, which Sam didn't have a chance to get into much because of all of the other slides, and I think they're very important things. First, why does Islamic finance matter? And we touched on that a little bit. And why is riba forbidden? So, why does Islamic finance matter? First, there was a time when it wasn't called Islamic finance. It only became known as Islamic finance because after some time, it only became important to Muslims. Once it was available and pursued by all three monotheistic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So the prohibition on usury existed long before it was called Islamic finance. Those prohibitions still exist, and only Muslims care about it, so then it was dubbed Islamic finance. For centuries, commerce was conducted using a set of divine laws that govern commerce. And after some time, bankers began to introduce, and I'll explain how the word banking and bankers came about. Bankers began to introduce exceptions and modifications to the rules so that they can profit, because it was, as Sam said, a value-neutral pursuit. It didn't really matter how the profit was derived, as long as the profit was derived. In fact, when I speak in Washington, D.C., I often point out to the fact that, during the Civil War, both the North and the South agreed on one thing, even though the battle was, so different. It was fought over, such a contentious issue, but they both agreed on pursuing profiteers. So those who tended to want to profit from the death of and the continuation of the war by selling munitions and weapons were considered profiteers, and both the North and the South pursued them, jailed them, etc. So it's kind of interesting how we've lost our way. And it used to be that bankers were shunned from society, and today they're revered. If you're J.P. Morgan Chase or Jamie Dimon, right? If Jamie Dimon was up here speaking, oh my God, Jamie Dimon, But at one time, a banker was shunned from society. Those laws were modified so that profits can flow, and of course, the way that riba works is it creates from nothing, right? So the word itself, riba, comes from the Arabic word rab, and that is a phenomenon that occurs in the desert, where over time, nothing but the passage of time builds sand. Sand, it starts accumulating, and it starts with a small mountain or hill, and it continues to grow. So over time, it becomes this, giant hill, and then nothing but the passage of time occurred, right? So it's something from nothing, which means, of course, it's transgression against Allah's divine right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only divine being who has the right to create from nothing. And it's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declared war, and only once was war declared by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and and it's on usury. So it's not on genocide, which is happening today, right? There's not a war declaration on genocide or on anything else. It's only declared on usury because that's a transgression. That is man essentially through his actions saying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I too am a God. I too can create from nothing. You create from nothing above, and I create from nothing on earth. So it's a direct affront to Allah's divine right. Now, interestingly enough, in Christianity, Jesus, peace be upon him, also demonstrated aggression only once. You know, our Christian friends and community members, they revere Jesus, peace be upon him, as the prophet of peace, right? Turn the other cheek. There's no aggression in his work or in his message. But only once did he declare aggression, when he went into the temple and turned over the moneylenders' tables. It used to be called a bank, right? It's a table, an Italian word. So he turned over these banks and kicked all of the moneylenders out of the temple. So that was the only aggression demonstrated by Jesus, peace be upon him. So it's not a new thing. It's just been forgotten. And of course, guidance exists to stand, as Sam was saying, as vanguards for Islamic finance. We don't compromise. It's much more difficult to do what we do. When I was first introduced to Islamic finance, I was told that I must get used to hearing no, because every interaction with, whether legislators, which we have to engage with, or any financial transaction, we insist that it is structured properly. And of course, a lot of times you hear no, wrong. And then of course, if you don't have the passion for this, you get frustrated, you get tired, you get exhausted. But clearly, we're still here 25 years later, and we're still as energetic as ever, and we're still pursuing that for the sake of the community. And the purpose is to introduce financial products and services that are not bank-based, so that a Muslim can enjoy essentially the same access to financing and home ownership and anything they would normally want to pursue from a bank, but within their faith, by holding true to their faith. So no compromise in that area. And that's really our mission. And we stand alone in that area. Everybody else is a bank. Everybody else in this field is a bank or a bank subsidiary. So, when we say we're not a bank, we're very proud of that. And we never want to be a bank. In fact, we're kind of the antithesis of a bank. I think that's my last note. And I really want to thank Shabir and his team standing back there. This didn't happen by chance. There was a lot of hard work going into organizing, structuring, and setting this up, and getting you guys all to come in here. So I want to thank you very much for that, and the rest of the team, Hassan and Salman, and turn it back over to you, Salman. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.